Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped. I'm back. I'm excited as I normally am when I'm doing these introductions. And today I'm joined by a current player. We don't get too many current players. And this is a man I have spoken to before on a format like this. And I really enjoyed it. And I hit him up and said, I'd love to get you on the podcast. So I'm absolutely delighted that he's been able to take some time and join us. He's got a great story. I absolutely love it. He's a Scotsman who's down south plying his trade, doing great things. He's got his Scotland caps and he's got a great view of the world, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to him. So let's waste no more time and bring in the one and the only Mr. Scott Steele. Hello, sir.
Hello. What an introduction. Good to see you again. Good to have a little chat.
Yeah, I'm interested. Now, you're at Harlequins. That's a long way from where you first fell in love with the game of rugby. What's it like being in a Premiership club as really that wee lad for Dumfries?
I do think about it a fair amount, to be fair. It's not like something you get used to. I remember after lockdown and when I first moved to Quins, we were playing. It was obviously with no fans and all that sort of stuff, and we're playing quite a lot of games in a short space of time. And I remember I was starting a game against my old team, London Irish, at the Stoop, and I went in to the toilet, and then I just remember turning around, looking in the mirror, and I had a Quins top on. And first of all, I was like, I used to be Irish for 6 years, and I've got a Quins top on. I was like, you like, for a lad from Dumfries, you've done all right, like, to be representing like a club like both their histories. I was like, you've done all right there. And it was just sort of like right, so you're here now, don't mess it up. Like, make sure you make the most of it. Like, you can't just sit back and be like, oh, you've done it now. So, but that was a strange moment. I just sort of was like, that realization before we went to go and play. I was like, all right, you've came quite a long way, but let's keep this going. Let's try and kick on again. So I owe a lot to obviously Dumfries and the Dumfries Saints and all the people involved in that, all the volunteers, all the family, friends. I loved it there. I still say to my brothers and my cousins and my mates back home, like, I will get a cap for Dumfries Saints first team one day. I would have hopefully got one the year that I went to Merchiston. So I played the under 16 stuff and then went to Merchiston, come back and play the odd Colts game if it was allowed in the schedule. And then I always wanted to play for the Saints, and I went to Watsonians for a bit. And then so I never got that chance to actually wear the black and white in the first team and run out of Park Farm, which was what I wanted to do growing up. That was it. Watching my cousins and my brothers play together, I thought that's unbelievable. And always had a strong team considering the sort of demographic of like how small the place is, and have to be roping guys, the good guys from like local clubs, basically try to entice them to come and play. And it's a great club and still is. And my brother Jack was captain last year. I think he's going to be captain again this year. I don't know what he's thinking, but still a real good connection with that club. And I will, even if it, I'm 38 years old and my hips are gone and whatever, I'll hopefully still one day at least play 1 minute on that Park Farm pitch to sort of tick that off.
If any of them are listening to this, they're going to be holding you to that. Your phone's going to be going bye.
They say that, they're like, no way will you? And I'm like, honestly, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that I at least get one game, and even if it's not for the first, I'll play for the seconds. I'll do anything just to get a senior cap.
See, there's loads in that I love. Right back to you looking yourself in the mirror, because there's a huge number of pros who it is their job, and I wonder where the love goes. But that little bit you've just given us there would say that you love playing rugby.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's who you're playing with, who are the guys that you turn around and you look at, and you know that I'd go down the trenches for that bloke. Like, it wouldn't even matter if we're playing, 5th, 6th division. It's that feeling of coming off the pitch and being like, I didn't let them down, or he was unbelievable today. Like, let's get around him tonight for a few beers. Or it's just that sort of respect that you gain. Like, people talk about it in all different industries of like, and if you go through tough times, like adversities, where I was at London Irish, we got relegated, and there's some guys that you can maybe look at and be like, oh, he wasn't really there. He didn't really put his neck on the line. But the guys that did, you hold that forever. Like that guy, he didn't give up. Like he was a good guy. He didn't say, "Ah, we're down now," you know. So I think it's more the relationships that you build with people, and obviously that connection of where I'm from, where I grew up playing my rugby, what essentially the foundation that gave me the ability to go on and do what I did. That could go back to that club, and there's no one there. But still, I sort of owe that to them to go back and play, and I want to do that because I've watched them play since I was the first rugby game that I probably ever watched was back there at that pitch. So I think it definitely does make it special. And I think the more you go up, you sort of get drifted away from that because it becomes a business. Guys, move on from club to club. It's tough now to see that sort of. Even I think Harlequins is quite special in the way that you have had a bunch of lads that were there for a long period of time, like your Joe Marlers, your Rob Shaws, your Danny Kerrs, your Mike Browns. And they were there for like the first one in 2012, and then when they did it, last not that season just there, but the one before that was special, and you don't really get that. So that's sort of like not the usual, but to get a connection with a club, I think takes time, and obviously in professional game, not everyone gets time. So I think that's the thing with Dumfries is like in anyone's sort of home club, it's different to now. Like people say, oh, would you play if you didn't get paid? And I'd be like, well, yeah, I would, but it'd be for a certain team. It'd be for a team where I really get on with all the guys and understand they're on the same wavelength as me. I'm not going to go and play somewhere that I don't really know anyone, I don't enjoy it, and I'm sure I'd get to know people, but it'd be more playing it because I'm socialising with my mates and to get that same feeling of like, oh, we've actually done something good today. Like we can earn going out and having a few beers, or we can go back and have a takeaway together and watch what's over on the TV because we've actually done something together today, rather than just sort of like floating through. It's that anticipating of waiting for a weekend and be like, right, this is it. We've got something to do here. Let's do it. Doesn't matter if you do it or not. It's like, right, you've got something to look forward to.
I'll absolutely love it. You grew up though. I mean, when you were born, your first knowledge of rugby, I know you're saying the first game you went to was Dumfries, but the game was professional when you were, hitting the end of your primary school, going into secondary school. There's a lot of kids who support the professional game and maybe don't have that upbringing you had, being on the touchline, probably kicking a ball around, going into the clubhouse after the game, doing all those things. What was it, or who was it that do you think hooked you in at Dumfries?
I didn't have much of a choice, to be honest. Dad played for the club, uncles played for the club. All of Dad's best mates played together. So then both my brothers, older, both played. Cause like literally 2 sets of different cousins, both brothers played, and that was it. And we'd go down on a Saturday, and it'd be like back in the day. I don't even know what time scale it was, but my dad would be playing, and then my mum and her friends would be the ones that were in the kitchen cooking the post-match meal and all that kind of stuff for them. And then everyone, that would be their hub. That's where they'd socialise. So they'd hang out there for hours. And I'd always remember you'd be outside playing like just tackling each other, like whenever we could run about really. And you'd come back into the rugby club and it'd just be like full of smoke. It'd be so, you could try to find mum and dad, and it was in the days when you could smoke inside, obviously. And that was always like, you come back and you'd stink of smoke. That was always like the memory of rugby club. And then when that law came in, it was a different place. Like you could go up, find mum and dad straight away and be like, right, what's going on? But yeah, so that's what we'd do every Saturday. And then the minis would be on the Sunday. So then when I was old enough, we'd go down and play there with all my mates and have mini tournaments and train and all that kind of stuff. And it just sort of built from there.
When did you think you could become a rugby player, or were you growing up thinking I'd love to do that as a job, or were you just doing it because you loved it?
Probably sort of thought, oh, I wanted to play football professionally first. Played all the way through sort of when you got to the level of like primary 6, primary 7, played in sort of Dumfries and Galloway sort of regional teams and did really well, like won tournaments and did that through the age groups, and for like first 3 years I think it was of like secondary school, I was up at Kilmarnock playing with them, and I was decent. I played left back and loved it, and it was just driving from Dumfries up to Kilmarnock. There was another guy from Lochmaben that would also like share the lifts with his dad, and my dad would take turns and go up like 3 times a week basically. And I did enjoy the actual football bit, but it was literally like you finish the game, you're in the car, you're gone. It was good to like speak to or like socialise with people from different parts of Scotland as well. So you go up there and there'd be proper Glaswegians, like, and obviously like football's a bit more like, it's more of a working class sort of sport, so there'd be all sorts of characters there, and I loved it, and the lads were great. It was hilarious. But we'd go and play like Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, like all these top teams, and it was very much a feeling from very early, like you have a good game against one of these, and then bang, you could go. Like that's the sort of mindset that all the lads had, and did that for a bit, and they wanted to continue doing it. But the whole fact of travelling, I hated it. I hated travelling up to Kilmarnock, and then further, if it was an away game, we would just meet them wherever. So it was sort of like in the back of my head, I was like, it's just a lot for our parents to sort of do this, and I don't know how long I'd stick at it, even if I'd thought of moving away from home was quite scary as well. Like, right, well, the next stage is probably have to move with these guys that I do get on with, but I've not actually spent proper time with them. It's just been training in the car home or play a game in the car home. So I was like, they could do this for years, and then I've got to make that step of maybe moving up there, and then I could last 6 months and be like, don't like that, just get me home. So did that for a bit, and then decided to move back and play for Queen of the South, just the local team, which all my sort of closer friends played for, which also had a good team and were successful. And even then I was thinking, maybe this is better for me. Like I could play this sort of, not as good a team, and probably will end up taking me further and all that kind of stuff. And it was only when I sort of floated the idea around of going to Merchiston after meeting Sam Hidalgo at like the under-17 Scotland stuff, because I was still doing stuff all the way under 16, which was still football and rugby, try to balance it. And then it was just after beating him, and he talked to me, and there was another guy, Michael Walker, who's from Sanker, whose family had been to Merky, and chatted to them, and the idea of it was less intimidating. I was moving away, but I was still with lads. I was going to be at a boarding school. I knew a few guys already, and the main reason I was going was to play rugby and to basically get better coaching and exposure to playing rugby more often and playing at, well, I would say a high standard, but I've always had this debate with the lads at school whether my Dumfries team would beat our Merchiston team, but it was more the exposure of playing rugby all the time. In your spare time you'd be playing touch, and also the fact that like I would do more training, and also I'd be up in Edinburgh, so like facilities and gyms and all that kind of stuff would be better with the programme that was on at the minute. So it was only then that I was like, right, this will be better for my rugby, and that'll be, and then it sort of flipped like, well, if I do well there, then I could actually get a job out the back of it. Whereas football was always sort of, I didn't really think that I was ready or wanted to go for it as much. But yeah, it was only until I moved to Merky that I was like, right, okay, this is really a stepping stone in the direction of going to rugby.
When they produce a football at training, do you get excited?
Yeah, all the backs do. To be fair, they all absolutely love it. So they do it all the time. They get it out for training and stuff like that, and it's great. Danny Kerr's really good as well. A few of the lads look north were like, that's what we're all just failed footballers. The backs, we just went somewhere wrong down the line and thought, right, we'll pick this up instead.
I said that to somebody the other day. They said, why did you play rugby? I said, because I wasn't good enough at football. I actually said that to somebody the other day. And Danny Kerr played, did he not? He was a decent footballer when he was younger?
Yeah, so I think he was like Sheffield United. I think he was in the academy and stuff like that, and did it to an age, and he played in the same youth team as like Jamie Vardy and stuff like that. Like, and he got to a stage where I think it was the same thing. It was like, you know, it was a bit small, and I think they held that against him. And then it was the fact that he was like, he went on one like rugby tour with his with his like dad and his mates, and it was completely different to the same sort of thing that I was saying. It was like the social side of rugby. It made it a bigger thing. It didn't make it just rugby football. It was like, well, if I do rugby, I'll get all that experience with it. And I think that's probably come across from like you said, like the professionalism, like being so late to turn pro. There's still a lot of good things about rugby that are still there today as well. And make it so good and so appealing to people to take it up, whereas football's very much like just the football. And you can see in like these documentaries with like the All or Nothings and stuff, it's so full on. Like they're absolutely buzzing when they get like a day off the next day after a game, or get 2 days off, and it's like it's just relentless. It's just game after game. Like there's no time to even socialise and chill out with all your mates after a game and stuff like that. So I think that social side of rugby is good, and I hope it doesn't go anywhere because it makes it special.
Then sort of football goes on the back burner. You take on rugby, and obviously you're then picking up representative stuff. When you get to play for Scotland, the age group, Scotland's a small pond, but there's an amazing feeling to think, hang on a minute, I'm one of the best in Scotland at my age. Was that where you? I'm trying to think how I'm putting this. Were you aware that you were the best in Scotland, or were you just trying to be the best that you could be at that point?
I never really thought it as like, oh, I'm the best in Scotland or anything like that. But I think it was made a bit different for me because I played in a team where we had, I think there was 3 of us basically from Dumfries that ended up going the whole way to the Glasgow stuff and then doing the Scotland under 17s and the 18s stuff. And yeah, one of the lads from Dumfries was captain of the 18s. So that made it feel more normal, and it didn't really sort of think, like you say, like, oh, we are playing first pick in our position for our country at this age. That's pretty like mad to think about it, because we'd all sort of done it together. It was just like, oh, we're just lads from Dumfries that are all right, so we're just doing this together sort of thing. So I didn't really think about it like that. But if I was sit there in the team and there was no one really that I knew as well as them 2 lads next to me, it would have been a bit different. I would have been like, oh, this is weird. I've been selected from this team and taken and put into the Scotland team. I think that would have made it. Oh, it's my alarm. That's to make sure I wasn't going to be late for this. Started early. So then, yeah, it was. So I didn't really feel like that. But then you'd look back after you finished the games or the tournaments, and people would be coming up to you and be like, "Oh, it's amazing that you played in that and you got selected." And it was only then that you were sort of like, "That is pretty cool to think that you are representing your country at like any level." And even when we played for like Glasgow and stuff like that, it was still cool, and it felt good for us because I think there was 6 of us that got picked to play for Glasgow at Dumfries, and you're like, amount of clubs and like how big Glasgow is a place. Like we're just this tiny little town down the sort of bottom of the country that gets chucked into that region, and you're just like, that's pretty impressive stuff. Like we don't have the facilities and the Institute of Sport at the time that it was. There was 3 of us that were involved in it, but all these guys would have to go to these, like they'd go to like Edinburgh University gyms, or they'd go to these places for skill sessions and go to like proper, like really well funded places, and we'd just be going down this like the other academy, the other high school across the road, and just doing our weights in there, and it felt like we're not really getting looked after here as well. And if we want to get looked after as well, we're going to have to travel an hour and 45 minutes up the road. So it was good to do it with them lads to sort of, not as a bit of a, but just to sort of prove people wrong that like it doesn't matter if you're from this little town or whatever. If you work hard and you're good enough, you can climb up and you can do that stuff. Which also at the same time, I think there's a few lads that got missed out from our team as well, and it was a bit of a thing to them, like, well, I can show you that we're actually decent. I think there was a few guys. There was a guy, Jamie Graham and Ewan Miller, that were 2 really good back row players, and I think at times they were like played way better than we did in sort of club games. And then it was just like, well, we've got 3 lads from Dumfries that'll probably do. But looking back, there's not like they should have been playing in the under 17 stuff for sure. And it was good to sort of fly the flag for Dumfries in that way.
It's brilliant because you didn't. It's a lesson, like you said. You didn't need all that shiny stuff. It's the hard work and the relationships, because it probably spurred you on having those guys next to you. You mentioned your brothers already, who are both played a heap of club rugby. I mean, I don't know how many appearances the two of them have got up here, but they've been going for a while.
Yeah.
How much does that help your development, having brothers to tackle and kick with and chuck with and, rough and tumble?
I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Like, you can play, like, when you start, it's like, I think nowadays it's all about the tag or touch and all that kind of stuff. There was none of that. It was in the garden, right? They'll run at you, you try and tackle them, and if it doesn't work, you get up, you try again, you go for it. And I remember playing a game in my auntie and uncle's garden. It was just we called it up and under game. You just put a massive bomb up, someone go up, like, you take turns, whoever catch it would catch it, and it's just as soon as they land, like, everyone else would just flatten them. And that was the actual game. So it would get you good at the high ball stuff, and it was like, you just get ripped to shreds if you didn't catch it, like, and that was it. And I remember catching one, and I think it was my brother, like, hit me, and then two of them else came on top, and then my cousin Ewan, he just ran in, and I was like sitting like that, and he just ran in and like piled on and hit my arm, and then I just had a crack, and my wrist like snapped, and it was broken, and I was just like, oh no. And I went through to my auntie, and I was like, I think I've broke my wrist, and she was like, yeah, that's definitely broke. Took me to the hospital, and I was just like, she just must have been like, what are them lads up to? Like, what are they doing? Like, but that was like, we played all the time, and then I remember going to like watch my dad referee and stuff, and we would just be messing about in the dead ball area or on the pitch next door, and we'd just be playing rugby the whole time. So we talk about like 10,000 hours of practice or whatever, like any spare minute that we had, we wouldn't really say it was like worked out planned practice. It was just messing around. It was just having fun. I think that went a long way, and having two older brothers nowadays is really good because they know about the game. You hear about guys that have got parents or siblings that don't really know rugby that well, and after every game they'll get a text through saying like, oh, you played really well, like what a great game, and they might not have played well, like, and it's even worse for them. Like, it's nice for them to say that, but they don't have a clue I've actually had a stinker, and they'll just text me that. Whereas I can text my brothers and they'll give me like honest feedback and be like, yeah, it was a tough night at the office, but like, you weren't getting much ball, to be fair, and like your forward pack were getting dominated, or if they say something nice, then I know that I must be doing something well, because it's not usual that they'll be like, oh, great going. So I think it's really good in that way that they played the game, they still play the game, and that they know what's going on, and they can sympathise with certain stuff that not a lot of people sort of from the outside looking in understand. And if I'm coming back from injury and I play, and I'll be like, oh, I wasn't too happy with how I went, and I'll be like, not played for like 2 or 3 months, like, as a starting point, it's pretty good going. Like, you've got to think about that. You can't just like take it as a one-off. So, yeah, it's definitely good to have people like that. Which that's just luck that they play the game and they enjoy it. And same with my dad as well. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to it. So it's good to have that sort of support. The one thing is, like, because they know a lot about it, they want to know what's happening day to day, and they're just like, I'm looking after myself, chill out. Like, if there's something to tell you, I will tell you. So they've got better at that. I remember coming home and it'd be, what's happening, rugby, and I'd be there like in the car coming back from somewhere after half an hour, I'd be like, look, can we just not talk about rugby for the next couple of hours, because that'd be great. And they'd be like, right, okay, yeah, fair enough. But they just love it. So it's tough for them. They just want to know and all this kind of stuff. So that they've learned that now. It took a while before I actually just went with it. Don't want to speak about it. And now they're like, do you want to chat about it? And I'm like, yeah, sweet, happy. And then they sort of know when I'm not in the mood, or if I am in the mood.
I've known your old man for a long time. He was a referee in club game when I was playing, and he was one of the referees that actually had a wee bit to him, and you could have a bit of chat to him, and you knew he knew the game. I think I saw a picture of him when he was able to see you play for Scotland, and he just looks like the proudest man on the planet. What did he say to you when you were able to message him and say, by the way, Dad, see on? I know I don't think he was there for your first one, was he? because you
No.
played behind closed doors for your
He's
first
not.
two.
He's not seen me play. No,
Oh, he's not seen you.
No, because it was still COVID.
I saw a picture of his social media. It must be he was at Quids, and he just looked like a very happy man. He obviously has played a massive part in your journey.
Yeah, like that's one of the main things when you look back and go like, right, I've done something good here. To see their reaction, like after they played against England at Twickenham in the Six Nations, we flew back straight back to Edinburgh. Everyone was on the beers, and Mum was like, "Oh, can we have a Zoom chat or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So I went there, and it was like Mum, Dad, both my brothers, and we just had like the madness of everyone just like enjoying the win, and I was just sat there in my room, and we had a chat, and it was added because of lockdown. It was like, everyone's so proud of you, like you've gave the nation such a lift and all this kind of stuff, and I was like proper getting emotional, like geez, and then they were getting emotional, and that was a pretty surreal moment, like for a family that wouldn't really get emotional that often, and it would be very much like have a laugh, take the piss out of each other, to have that one moment of like being serious and saying stuff like that when it really hit home, and that because it was a tough period for everyone in the country at that time, with lockdown and isolation and not seeing friends and family, and then to do something like that, just to give people a lift for a few days, if even for that night, for someone that wasn't even into rugby would be watching that as a Scotsman and be like, that's pretty cool, like put a smile on the face. So I think that was the time when I was just like, right, that gave me an insight of what I do actually impacts on them, my family, my friends and stuff like that, of being like, they do care, even at times when you think, for me especially, like moving away from Scotland at 18 and just going down to England and doing my thing ever since. Sort of at the start was like, right, I'm on this one man mission just to try and play professional rugby, and sort of not give the fingers up to the guys that didn't pick me for the stuff when I was in Scotland originally. It was sort of like, oh, I'll show you sort of thing, and I'm just going to go away and graft away, and could be further from the truth. Like my parents and my brothers and my friends were always there with me the whole way through, and to see them sort of so proud of you, and that's the thing when you're injured and you're thinking, oh, this isn't looking good, or like I really can't be bothered with this. Like I'm isolated from my mates in the squad now, in the playing group and all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking, oh, I can't be bothered today. Them memories for me are the things that go, nah, come on, like they wouldn't want to see you just sulking and not taking every opportunity to get better. Like pull your finger out. It's not just about you here. It's got more to that because of the effect that it has.
How do you have the courage at 18? You weren't in the sort of comfortable progression that lots of players are, where they go into an academy and it's all sort of, he seems to almost unravel in front of them. Like you said, like I have this vision of you just with a rucksack on your back at 18, and like I'll be back sometime. Like
that's not far from the truth. That is literally. So what they did at the time at Leicester was they had like house parents, so just people that would sign up, and you'd pay. My mum and dad would pay them like 50 quid a day or whatever. It's quite pricey the way it worked out in the end, but it's like Monday to Friday, 50 quid a day, and they'd basically look after you, these people, and they'd be complete strangers, and like driving down to Leicester from Dumfries and getting out, and my mum and dad meeting these people, lovely people, and just being like, right, see you later. And my mum apparently cried like first like 2 hours on the way back, just like, you just like dropped off this like our son at these random people's house in Leicester, and like, what's going to go on? They could be horrible people or like anything. And I was just sat there in this little town, like counter stop on the outskirts of Leicester, and I was like, I know one lad at the club through under 18s, like Scottish. He was an XL. I was like, I don't know no one else. I don't know where I am. I don't know how to get to training. I don't drive. I was like, this is just going to be terrible. I was like, what's going on? And yeah, for them to just, it was not as bad. Going to Merky, my mum was a bit like, oh, sending the son away to boarding school, all this kind of stuff, but that was nowhere near as bad because we knew people there, and it was, just up the road, and was a lot more familiar, but that was a strange feeling, just walking into someone's house that you've known worked before and be like, right, I'm going to be staying here for potentially a year. This is strange. Like coming down after dinner and just sitting watching TV, and you're just like, what do we even chat about? Like, it's so bizarre. But that was a tough time. I actually got to like 3-4 months in and was just like, can't be dealing with this. Like, so then eventually a lad that came in late as well, we got a flat together for I think it was like 6 months. So I did basically 6 months there and then 6 months at that flat. But yeah, at the start for the first 2 months, I was like, yeah, this isn't good. I was like, Mum and Dad have taken a chance on me coming down here, and they basically described it to me as, well, you know, we paid for Jack when he went up to university to like cover rent and all that kind of stuff, and we're seeing it the same thing. Like, this is an opportunity for you to get a career and a job. So for the first year, we'll financially support you with accommodation, through the house parent thing, and we'll give you money to get through. And then, you know, after a year, if there's a contract that comes up, like, great. But if not, then we'll reassess and we'll go from there, sort of thing. So, because I didn't want to go in there, and I was like, well, I could stay at Watsonians. They were going to give me a lovely flat by the Meadows, and I was going to get like a couple of £100 a game and then a win bonus as well, and played pre-season games and played one league game away to Selkirk, and we won that. And I was like, right, okay, I'm pretty like the lads here, a great bunch of lads, and I was going to do that. And then this came up, and it was really them that like, no, look, like, this is like a big deal. Like, Leicester Tigers, like, go and you've had your 2-week trial, did that before, and it went well. They're offering you a place, but it's not paid. I was like, all right, forget it then. Like, I didn't want my mum and dad to sort of take that sacrifice again and do that. And I was like, nah, it doesn't worry, I'll play at Watsonians. But in the back of my mind, I think I was also like, Watsonians was safe. It was the easy option. I didn't have to start again somewhere, and that was quite intimidating. So I think, yeah, good on them to be like, no, let's do this. Like, we're happy for you to do this. We want you to do this. Back you for the year and do it that way. So, yeah, if it wasn't for them, I would have just took the easy option and stayed at Watsonians. And who knows if I would have even played and managed to get a contract there, but definitely would have been a lot harder for me, I'd say.
Am I right? The story I got was that your mate in the 18s, the Exile, had said to you, Tigers need a scrum half. How did the next bit like, did he go back and say, oh, by the way, I've spoken to a scrum half and he's quite like, how did the connection lead to you getting out the car and staying with a house parent?
So it happened like, yeah, it was an XL that was playing for us at 20s, Corey Venus, and he said our scrum half's injured at the minute, and it's the referee Christoph Ridley, in the Prem. He was a scrum half at Leicester, but he kept dislocating his shoulder, and it was like had a few ops, and it was around the time where he dislocated it, like a time when it looked like that was going to be him done. So it was that injury. So I just got an email address and sent it to them. Sent them an email like saying, spoke to Corey, blah blah blah, like wondering if there's a thing, like happy to come down for a trial. Let me know, whatever, blah blah blah. Like, look forward to hearing from you. And they got back to, this was basically my mum and dad that basically did this, and they came back and were like, yep, you can come down for a 2-week trial. So came down and stayed with Corey and his family, and the schedule was brutal. It was like start weights at like 6 a.m. So we had to do all our stuff in the gym before the first team came in. So start weights at 6 a.m. and then whilst the first team came at the gym, we would do like our training session. So we did our running session there. And then when they got out to do the running session, we'd be back in the gym doing some sort of other conditioning. And then we'd be back outside doing like, we did like car pushing and stuff. They like load up this car with like all these barrels and just like push it around the pitch, and it was horrendous. And just did that, and we did really well. And it wasn't a lot of rugby stuff. There was a bit of rugby stuff, but it was more like, it was all the new guys that came in, and it was more of a test to sort of figure out. And it was pretty old school, and it was a lot of like the older lads in the academy, the 3-year academy. A lot of the older lads would, you know, test out the younger lads, and there'd be a bit of what you'd say bullying, but it was more testing the waters, and it was pretty hostile. And the coaches, if like giving up was just not an issue, like it was not an option. Like they would really good get stuck into you, and it was pretty intense. And I was going like, this is by far the hardest training I've ever done, and like, I don't know if I'd be able to do this all the time. But I think that 2 week was just to test out everyone, and did well in that. And it was just after that, they were like, look, we'd love to keep you, but because it was, I think it was like September time, so it was late on in terms of when they got back to me, and they were like, we want to keep you, but we've got no room in the cap, so we basically have to try and work it out some way. And my mum and dad at that stage said, oh, we'll back you until next season, and then hopefully then you can get a contract.
So you're down there, you're finding it tough, you're a bit isolated, and then what was it you think that got you over the line? Was there a moment? Was it just generally how you applied yourself? How do you think you then got over that hurdle?
Extreme luck. Wait there, I need to plug my charger on. There we go. Extreme luck. It was, we played, the first team basically had, Ben Youngs went away with international duty, Sam Harrison got injured, and Mickey Youngs got banned for eye gouging or something, but it wasn't even him that did it. In the club were like, and he was like, you're not going to appeal it, and they were like, because it was someone else that they sort of valued, like Billy Twelvetrees at the time that was playing 10, they're like, well, to be honest, like this. So it was Mike Grindle that was 9, and then it was Mike Grindle at 9, and then me left. So that was the thing. So I was just like, I need to sort my charger out, but I was just the last one left, basically. So that was when I was 18 or whatever, and so then was on the bench in the Premiership and played at like Welford Road at like 27,000 people there, and we played against Newcastle, came on, played quite well, and I was just like, this is mental, like what's going on? Played a few other times off the bench, and then I was like, this is great. They offered me a 2-year deal, signed that, and just thought, this is great, I'm gonna love this. And then for the next 2 years, just didn't get a game. It was just like LV Cup, like nothing came up. And I was just like, right, this is probably more how it works for young lads coming into a team like this. Like, you don't get that luxury of playing. Even when I was 18, I was like, right, this is holding a bag in training is the actual reality for a lot of us guys that were at a club that were at the time in Premiership finals. So there was no, right, let's try and develop people, like, let's use the academy. It was like, we've got All Blacks coming into the squad, we've got current England players, like, you had all internationals, you had British Lions. It was all right, what we're doing to win at the weekend. So that was just really lucky in that case that I had that injury and list of guys unavailable basically for me to play. And I did play, and they obviously went like, oh right, he's not bad actually. Because without that, they wouldn't have known, because it was just training. So that's all it was. And then, so I did that so I got that in my first year when I was like unpaid basically. And then for 2 years after that, played I think a handful of games and went on loan to Loughborough and played for them in National 1, which was great fun. It was like being at uni, but I didn't have to do any of the uni work. It was unreal. It was class.
Are you a rugby fan? Were there moments where you were training against somebody that you'd watched on Sky, or was it just another teammate?
No, definitely was a fan, especially at Leicester, because you weren't really playing with them. Like, you were looking up to them, training with them, and you were just like, this is cool. Like Mana Tuolangi and like Alassana Tuolangi, especially, like, the size of these guys, and I'm just this skinny lad from like Dumfries that's like barely touched a weight properly, and I'm like, so I'm actually expected to be safe on the same pitch as him. Like, this is mental. And just that was the first eye opener of like guys like, you had like Craig Newby and Scott Hamilton, like All Blacks that had, like, they must like, I'm at a decent place if they're picking up guys like him. He's travelled like across the world to come and play here at this team, and like that was when it was sort of an element where like, oh, this is an actual career. This isn't just like playing for a bit of fun. This is like, these guys will be on big money. And you had so many characters like Castro Giovanni and stuff like that, and like Jordan Crane and George Shooter, all these guys that are like internationals and just sort of like iconic figures of the game, and you're just there getting to train with them. It's sort of how what you got sold by the coaches, being like this is a great place for you to be. Look at the quality, and it was good. And like Geordie Murphy, like he's one of the most skillful players I'd ever watched and seen like live, and it was cool, but it wasn't really like you were learning off them. You just got to watch them, and they would help you out and stuff, but nothing beats playing. So it got to that stage where I was like, this is cool and this is amazing to train with these guys, but at the same time, I need to kick on now. I was 21. I was like, I need to play rugby. Like, if I'd stayed at Watsonians, I would have played a lot of rugby by now. Like, wouldn't have been the best standard or whatever compared to being at Leicester, but I was at 5 games in 3 years. It's not doing me much in terms of playing for the actual club. Played a few games for Loughborough, but that was even towards the back end of my second year, so it wasn't even a solid continuous of games. I just got stuck in that spot where if there was one injury at 9, I'd be the travelling reserve that would have to go and do the warm-up in case someone got injured. So like, it's cool to go away to some places and see some stadiums, but you're just sitting there going, I am literally just covering for a bit unlikely event if someone gets injured in the warm-up and I'm not playing. I'd rather be 4th choice than 3rd because I'd be at least going on loan and playing. So it was at that stage that I thought, right, I need to sort of just bite the bullet and move on here.
And London Irish was a pretty decent place to go.
Yeah, it was great. So I was lucky in the sense that I had a couple of mates that were in the same spot as me at Leicester before. They were on loan at Nottingham, and regardless how well they played there, it was just, look, he's fit, he's going to play above you, like he's senior. Like, it wasn't a case of like, oh, you're an academy product, we're going to get you in. It was, if we need you, we'll sort of use you, sort of thing. And at the time they were successful, so there's no sort of like, you can't really begrudge that. They like, it's just the way they worked. So them guys had went to Irish and they ended up playing like 20 odd games in the Premiership, and I was like, that's mad. And like, they were playing well, and it was that confidence boost to be like, right, well, they've done that. They're all good players, but like, you never know until you just do it, until you're in that, like, let these young lads play and just dive straight in. So I went there and trained hard in pre-season, had competition that was tough, but they were sort of at the other end of their career. They'd already been established, and I just went in and worked really hard and managed to play. And the first game I played was at Twickenham, actually, in the double header game, and it was against Harlequins, and there was like 60,000 people there. And I was just like, this is mental. I was like, trying to find my mum and dad in the crowd, being like, what is going on here? And I was like, I used to play like Loughborough in front of like 3 fucking blokes and a dog just sitting there. And I was just like, right, I think even if this game goes terribly, like, you've made the right choice here. There's no chance you'll be starting in the Premiership at Leicester. So played that game and probably went all right, probably like 6 out of 10. But for that occasion and everything, I was happy with it, and it sort of calmed me down by to go like, right, you can do this, you can play at this level, and it sort of built from there.
Was it tough to keep the confidence when you hadn't played enough rugby?
Yeah, it was, because you go from playing all the time and playing at a standard that you know that you're good at because you've played at it for so long. When you play at your age group, going up through school and stuff, you know where you're at because it's not really changing. Like, you can go up to Scotland and stuff, and that's the one time where you're thinking, right, I might not be able to get away with doing what I like or playing as well as I do usually because I don't know how good they're going to be. But definitely with that, you go from playing school boy sort of stuff club, and then you play the international, and then when you came to like Leicester, it was like I was either playing A-League, which is really up and down. Like, sometimes they'll have really strong teams you're playing in a really strong team, or you're playing against a really strong team and you don't have a strong team, so it's not that consistent level of like, right, that's where A-League is. It was tough to sort of gauge that, and some games you'd play really well, other games you wouldn't, and it didn't really help the confidence because it was a bit of a lottery to what teams were going to play. And then when you did go up to the Premiership, that was the time where I was like, right, this is fast, this is really quick and intense, and you think that you've got a time to think about, right, what am I doing here? But you don't. Someone's on you, and that realization of doing that, and then looking back at the game and thinking, like, I felt a lot more frantic than I looked when I watched it back, and I actually looked that it was all right. So sort of for me in my head, I was like, right, you can do it. You've watched yourself do it, but mentally you need to relax a bit, and you've got more time than you think, and you can play at this level. So it's not like the all and end all. If a mistake happens, it's not right. He's not good enough. He's never going to play again, sort of thing. So being at Irish was good for that, because if you go to a club, they bring you in and they back you essentially because they've signed you. They're going to give you a shot at least. They're going to see what they've invested in basically. And at Leicester, if you're in an academy as well, I'd say it's harder to do that because you're always sort of seen as an academy lad. Whereas you could be the same age but get signed by another team, and you probably get more of an opportunity because you've been headhunted, you've been sourced to come and help the team do better.
And then you join Harlequins at probably a weird time, is the way to describe it.
Very strange.
The world's in a strange place, and Harlequins were probably in maybe a crossroads or a roundabout. I don't know, deciding on who they're going to be and an identity. But to join a club, I mean, if you showed a rugby supporter the Harlequins shirt, they would know instantly that belongs to Harlequins. It's an iconic symbol.
Yeah.
You go there. Were you confident? Did you go in with a strut? Yeah, this is me. I can do this.
No, the opposite. I went in there going, right, can you still throw a ball? Can you still kick? Can you? I was like, I've ran in lockdown and lost a lot of weight. Ended up losing like 10 kilos at one stage, and it was just like, I can run, that's fine, but it's quite hard to do kicking and passing and competitive rugby stuff when you're in isolation and you're just by yourself. So I think like before I went, I did a few. So I came back to Irish for the last bit of my like sort of contract there, where it was like groups of 6. But they said to me, you don't have to come. Like obviously you're moving on. Like if it doesn't work out, but I was like no. So I did that, and just to train with other people, to socialise. So I stayed with a mate, did that for 6 weeks, and then went back home. And then when I finally got the Harlequin stuff, I was like right. So my brother Jack came down, and we just were kicking balls and stuff, and at the Dumfries Rugby Club, and I was like, this is mad. Like I've went like literally, I think it was like 2.5, 3 months of like not doing any of this, just running. I was like, now you're going down, and like it's going to be a short turnaround before you're actually playing again. So I was nervous, and I was just, the quicker I could get into it and hit the ground running, the better, obviously, because I was going up against tough competition as well. So I think things just worked out well in the way that we'd play on a Saturday or Wednesday and then play on a Sunday, and 2 of the guys in my position were older than me, so like the physios were going to look after them, and yeah, it just worked out that I went in there and was playing under Paul Gustard, who was really sort of defence driven and focused, and that's a strength of my game as well. So he just loved how competitive I was, and I ended starting quite a lot of games, and it was through that little period of 9 games that I ended up getting into the Scotland stuff. And I think just because of the way that I competed during the pre-season, and he just really took a liking to me and gave me a big opportunity. So I've got a lot to thank for him, even though as a team it sort of didn't go well for us the season after, and it was a turning point when he left and things sort of changed in the mindset of the club and stuff like that. But for me, he was great, and I owe a lot to him for taking a chance on me in the first place to go in, and then he was the one that like gave me a contract extension as well, pretty much. I think I was there for a couple of months, and he was like, "No, we'll try and get a longer term deal sorted out, give you a bit more security." And I was like, he didn't have to do that. He could have waited like 10 months or whatever until he did that. And so yeah, it owe a lot to him. And that was that period when I was playing well and was starting games and playing a lot, and then got into the Scotland stuff.
Paul Gustard gives you a chance. You're playing well. You know, you've been playing consistently for London Irish. How does it work? Are Scotland in touch with you saying we're keeping an eye on you? Are you messaging them, or is it just got to wait and see, be patient?
So when I was at Irish, at the start when I was playing, when I sort of first moved, I got a bit of chat, and it was, yeah, you're in contention, and I would always get a phone call like, sorry, you've just missed out or whatever, and then phone calls sort of stopped in the last couple of years when we were in the Championship, or when I wasn't playing in my last year, I was just not getting picked. So I can't remember really how it worked out. I think Gregor messaged me and just said that you're doing really well. It seems like a good move and all that kind of stuff. Like we're enjoying like how you're playing, all that kind of stuff. And I think Steve Tandy, the defence coach, also messaged me, and it was more that the feedback I was getting from the club. So the coaches would speak to the club's coaches as well. So Gustav was like, "Oh yeah, I had Gregor speaking to me about this and all this kind of stuff." And it was he phoned me after I played against Wasps, and I had a good game. And he was like, "Yeah, you're going to be involved for the autumn stuff." And I was like, "This is mad." Like, I've had this phone call so many times, but it's always been like, "You're in contention, but sorry." And this time it was actually like, "Right, I'm in it now. Right, what do I do now? This is mad." So then turned up to train next day, and he told me before he told the coaches. And I remember telling the coaches that I got into it, and they were all buzzing. It was great. They were like, "Chuff for you, like this is unreal, blah blah blah. Like what a mental couple of months this has been for you. Like literally didn't have a job a couple of months ago, and now you're going off to do your Scotland stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." I was like, "Thanks for, you played a massive part in it, everyone and stuff like that." So yeah, that was a big moment for me. I just remember coming off the phone and being like, "Right, what do I do now?" Like usually I'm like, that's a shame I'm not involved again, but oh well, just knuckle on. I was like, "Oh Christ, I'm nervous now. Like what's that going to be like? How like we talked about the levels. I was like, training at Quins and stuff's pretty tough. Like when we're actually training, it's pretty chilled out environment, but when we're training, we're on, it's tough. I was like, the environment's going to be pretty full on at Scotland. It's going to be pretty like you need to know your stuff, and it'll be pretty tough." And then for a couple of weeks, I was just thinking about that. Like, right, I need to make sure I'm fit because I don't want to be, turn up to training and I'm the one that's struggling and all this kind of stuff. I was like, trying to think about what training would be like and all that kind of stuff, and it would just go on and on. It wasn't like "Oh yes, I've made it, I'm relieved." It was like, "Oh nah, am I going to be good enough to do this? Like, have they made the right call?" So it was, and then once I got into it, obviously it was fine. It was tough, but it was right. This is what it's about. There was no mystery then. It was just right. This is it. It's tough. Get on with it. Like, and then I ended up getting picked for the first game against Wales to finish off the Six Nations, and that was a surprise. I didn't really think that. Didn't get a heads up before. There was myself. Ali Price was starting, and George Horn was also involved, and he's obviously played a lot more than me. And I just sort of thought, right, well, for any game, we're probably going to prioritise this one at Six Nations and all this kind of stuff. And then, yeah, just to see my name like come up and was picked, I was just like, right, no, this is real now. This is different. I thought I could come up here and potentially train the whole time and not play, and that would be still a great opportunity. But I was like, right, you've got to do something now. This is it. So yeah, that was amazing, and everyone was really good. And I remember actually George Horn was one of the first people to come up and congratulate me, and I thought that's class from him. That shows what he's about as a person, all that kind of stuff. He's obviously disappointed not to be picked himself, and them two had been put together for a long time, so it's disrupted that. And for him to come up to me and say congratulations and stuff, I was like, "No, that's good from you." So all the boys were great, and yeah, and then played on the wing for about 10 minutes and just tackled and hit rucks, and that was it. It was good enough to get through.
I absolutely loved speaking to Scott Steele. It was great of him to give up so much of his time, but unfortunately he was having some issues with his laptop battery, and there was some Wi-Fi issues. So hopefully the sound and the conversation came across nice and clear for you. And if you've been watching, you'd probably think, what on earth is going on? But Sean has done a great job in editing all together. And the positive was, as soon as we crashed, my phone beeped with a WhatsApp from Scott to say, "Oh, we didn't finish. We've still got things we need to cover." How amazing is that? Somebody who wanted to talk. I loved speaking to him. So the bonus of the first one not finishing and going as smoothly as we wanted is that we get a two-parter out of it. A few weeks had elapsed. Scott had then gone under the knife. So you heard his summer, and then part two came into the season just as he'd had his hip operation. So tune in, because you heard the first part and you're going to get the luxury of a second part later this week. So please tell your friends. You can catch us on Acast, Apple and Spotify. You can watch on Facebook and YouTube. Scott Steele Part 1 finished. but you've got Scott Steele Part 2 to look forward to. It was amazing to spend so much time with him, and I cannot wait to get down to London Village and see him in action for Harlequins when he gets back from his injury. Big Handsome Sean had his work cut out with this one to edit it all together, but I'm sure you'll agree he's done a fabulous job. Thank you for listening. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast. This is the end of Scott Steele Part 1, but you've got Scott Steele Part 2 to look forward to. My happiness is egg-shaped. I look forward to hearing and seeing you all very, very soon. Thank you.